Hello and welcome to Airheads, a not-so-serious look at the serious business of royal rumours, gossip and gowns. I'm Tom.
And I'm Maeve.
And we're on week God knows what of quarantine now.
Yeah, thank God for the royals, because they're basically the only thing to talk about at the moment.
So what you're saying is God save the Queen?
No, Tom. Thank you so much to those of you who've sent us messages asking us how we're doing. We really appreciate all of those. I mean, how are we doing? Like, we've just been talking about the royals a lot. We've made scones with jam and cream the other day. They were very nice. We've made Meghan Markle's courgette pasta from the Tig
so many times at this point. But it's so good. We also watched the Vice documentary about Meghan.
I thought it was very good, like very neat encapsulation of the whole story in like 40 minutes, but there's not really anything new in it, so I don't really have that much to say about it.
Yeah, I thought it was like very powerful to get all those perspectives on Meghan's importance, because I think that we're so used to seeing the negative. I liked it, but yeah, not that much to say. I've been reading The American Royals in advance of our book club, which is coming in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, if you want to read it, tune in on the 4th of May episode. We'll be talking about it. We've been watching a lot of period dramas. We were thinking about maybe doing a list of our sort of royal related and royal adjacent,
very much adjacent
media that we've been consuming or planning to in the next few weeks. We might put it on our website, airheads.co.uk. But just a reminder, if you are taking this time to binge the 3rd season of The Crown, you could go back and listen to all our recaps we did.
Yeah, God, it seems like so long ago. But yeah, we have 4 special episodes all about The Crown.
Or you could take our Quarren Queen quiz on the website.
Yeah, that's a good way to pass a bit of time with the people you're quarantined with, or over like a Zoom call or something like that.
I've also been reading a lot of magazines, including Vanity Fair. My new issue of Vanity Fair has not arrived yet, so I had to read online the exclusive cover story and interview with Princess Anne.
This took me by massive surprise.
Every month I'm always excited to see who is on the cover of Vanity Fair, and Princess Anne was not on my list. I did not see this coming whatsoever, especially not in the form that it came in, with this very glam black and white image of Anne that was taken in 1979 by Lord Snowdon.
The infamous Tony.
Princess Margaret's ex-husband. So at the time the photo was taken, Anne was only 29, and this whole interview is being billed as a way of marking her 70th birthday in August. I'm interested, and there certainly was a lot of debate around the use of this image on the cover and whether it was ageist to use an old photo rather than a more recent one. Now, I wonder, was Anne like, listen, I'll do the interview, but I'm not going to sit down for any fucking new photos. Like, maybe she just couldn't be bothered to do a photo shoot, or, you know, this is Vanity Fair. Maybe they don't want a photo of 70-year-old Anne on the cover. Maybe that's not going to sell. But let's get into the actual interview. So this was done by Katie Nicholl, the royal reporter. I found this interview very notable for how dull it was. So, I mean, she wouldn't talk about her son getting divorced. She obviously wouldn't talk about Prince Andrew at all. She wouldn't talk about Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. But she does kind of allude to those things a little bit, maybe. The first thing, though, that she won't talk about, but which a source talks about, is that viral video that we saw last winter when you saw Princess Anne, Boris Johnson, Justin Trudeau and Emmanuel Macron laughing together at a reception, seemingly laughing about President Trump. A source tells Katie Nicholl the princess was unhappy to be dragged into that particular story because she has always been careful not to be seen to be political in any way. She's also incredibly respectful, so any suggestion that she would laugh at anyone behind their backs was quite upsetting for her.
That seems like a total fucking lie to me, because I can literally see in my mind Anne laughing at someone behind their back. She doesn't want to be caught on camera. That's the thing.
I guess it was quite controversial, but nobody was singling Anne out as being the disrespectful one. It was just funny that she was there while all these political leaders were talking possibly about Trump.
Yeah.
And it just made her seem like such a dry shite. And I kind of wish she just let that myth just stand and just have nothing to do with it.
Well, something she isn't going to have anything to do with is The Crown. She definitely won't be listening to our recap. She hasn't seen the show, and according to someone who would know, she has no interest in watching her life acted out on screen.
Which is a pity because...
everyone has much more of an interest in her on-screen life than her actual life.
And Erin Doherty did such a good job
Yeah.
of portraying the young Anne and gave Anne some fantastic PR with her performance and made everyone suddenly interested in who Princess Anne was. People who maybe didn't even know that Anne existed before.
Yeah.
The first kind of hint of anything to do with Harry and Meghan is when she's asked about not giving her kids HRH titles. And she said, I think it was probably easier for them. And I think most people would argue that there are downsides to having titles. So I think that was probably the right thing to do. And Katie Nicholl points out this interview took place in February, a month after Harry and Meghan announced that they were going to step down. She's not talking about Harry and Meghan there, but that is kind of her perspective on the HRH.
It's kind of nice to hear someone from the family weighing in whether they think that kind of decision can be a right or wrong thing to do as well, rather than just an ambiguous decision. She also talked about her fashion, because, as we're constantly told, Anne is a fashion icon.
By Edward Enninful, the editor of British Vogue, who weighs in with a glowing comment on how Anne is a style icon. But Anne doesn't seem to see herself as such. We learned that she chooses her own outfits, does her own makeup, and is even known to fix her own tiara if necessary. Wow, what a woman.
She said that she recycles her outfits a lot because I'm quite mean. I still try and buy materials and have them made up because I think that's just more fun. It also helps to support those who still manufacture in this country. We mustn't forget we've got those skills and there are still places that do a fantastic job. She's the president of the UK Fashion and Textile Association, so she would kind of have to say this. But it is quite interesting, her way of supporting them is by very much the textile side of it. Like, she likes the fabrics and she likes the...
Harris tweed.
She loves Harris tweed because it doesn't get creased in the car.
She declines to identify herself as a feminist. Rather, she says she wants to see every young person achieve their full potential. Which, I mean, I guess that's not surprising. Like, she's 70. She's probably... a lot of people in that generation don't like the associations with the word feminist. And maybe she thinks that's a political issue.
Yeah.
I just thought that was notable. Then she talks a little bit about her grandkids and young people in general. She says, I find it very difficult to understand why anybody gets sucked into screens and devices. Life's too short, frankly. There's more entertaining things to be done. I suppose that puts me in the real dinosaur range. It does in a way, but she just puts herself even further in that range as she goes on, talking about work and the difference between her work, her parents' work, and the younger generation of royals' work.
She said, it's not just about can I get a tick in the box for doing this. No, it's about serving. It comes from an example from both my parents' way of working and where they saw their role being. I mean, my father served. It was a more direct form of service, I suppose you could argue. And the Queen's has been a lifelong service in a slightly different way. But they both have that perspective of service, which is about working with people. How many times can you put the word service into a quote?
I know, the service drinking game. Like, this to me read like, I was saying to you, it was almost like a cult and the god is service.
Yeah.
And you were saying that it seems like a more acceptable way of talking about ruling.
Yeah, I mean, you always hear that, not just at this point in history, but I think going back centuries, that yes, the monarch is the ruler, but that rule takes the form of service to the people. Obviously, it's a form of service that never truly asks what the people want, but that is kind of how it's framed, and I think that's particularly what the younger royals tried to do as well.
She goes on to talk a little bit about the younger generation, saying she worries that they may be in too much of a hurry to change the royal family's tried and tested approach when it comes to philanthropy. She describes herself as the boring old fuddy-duddy at the back, saying don't forget the basics. A nice little disclaimer there before she goes on to say, I don't think this younger generation probably understands what I was doing in the past. And it's often true, isn't it? You don't necessarily look at the previous generation and say, oh, you did that, or you went there. Nowadays, they're much more looking for, oh, let's do it a new way. And I'm already at the stage, please do not reinvent that particular wheel. We've been there, done that. Some of these things don't work. You may need to go back to basics.
She's quite vague in terms of who and what she's specifically talking about in this, but I thought it's very interesting. Obviously, the younger royals use social media an awful lot to reach a huge audience. And when she's talking about service and the importance of service, it would seem to me that the younger royals are able to serve a much larger audience by doing this.
Yeah, I mean, it just makes her sound like so outmoded because the wheel has already been reinvented.
Yeah.
Very much so, both in terms of a mass global media and social media that the royals now have to contend with and work with, both of those things, and that it's not enough to just be doing this very old-fashioned style ribbon cutting where, you know, you can do 500 engagements in a year and it's very clear that you can tick off, oh, well, I went to Coventry and I did this, and then I went to Cardiff and I did this. It doesn't work like that. And we talked about this a little bit last year when we started seeing Meghan doing those kind of behind-the-scenes visits to her patronages, and that you wouldn't learn about that till later, and that doesn't count as a typical royal engagement in the old style that she's talking about here, but it's very much a way of serving in the way that she's talking about, just in a more modern way of doing it.
And it's weird because you would have thought Anne would be in a perfect position to see how the Queen modernised the monarchy when she became Queen and how royal service came to be defined under that. And rather than denouncing these changes now, to be recognising that as like, this is what needs to happen now for the monarchy to continue to seem relevant, rather than what she's doing here, which is saying we need to go back to basics.
Yeah, it really reminds us that that old guard of royals really don't want the monarchy to change in any way. And it seemed to me like such a contradiction with the cover line on the Vanity Fair cover that calls her Royal Rebel.
Yeah.
Because she's very much sticking to the rules here. I thought it was significant that a lot of the media coverage of this particular quote, which seemed to be the one that got the most headlines, was that she was talking about Harry and Meghan when she talked about reinventing the wheel. Obviously, we don't know who she's talking about here, but she's either talking about Prince Harry or Prince William.
Yeah.
And it could possibly be Will.
I think so. I mean, Will, of the two of them, over the last, couple of years, has seemed the most work shy, and
not even couple of years. I think though all the criticism of him being work shy took place when he was working in the air ambulance stuff.
But I think that then this kind of criticism from Anne, who places such importance on showing up regardless of whether anyone's watching, that's very much the opposite of Will's approach, which is to show up as little as possible but get the most impact or the most chatter about it.
But speaking of younger royals, we did get a little update on the bride-to-be, Princess Beatrice, who was maybe testing the waters a little bit with a diary piece in the Mail on Sunday's Talk of the Town column last week. The headline was, "Busy Princess Beatrice has got massive new plans for her wedding day as friends believe a big day out will be good for Britain."
I do like the idea of her sitting with her friends, all deciding what's going to be best for Britain.
And it started out almost like this comical opening line. Princess Beatrice has a wonderful idea to bolster the nation's morale. An even bigger wedding for her and fiancé Edoardo Mapelli-Mozzi.
It's a little bit tight, but we can do it and it will be spectacular.
We heard this week that the wedding is officially postponed. But the Mail suggested that this could be a blessing in disguise, as plans are being hatched for a much larger affair next year. That should be the perfect tonic for Britons fed up after lockdown.
I kind of feel a couple of ways about this, because I do think that a big wedding would be really good next year. I think that royal weddings generate a lot for the economy, and we could be going into like a big recession, and I think that people will probably want to get out. I think people will want to see a lot of the kind of glamour and pomp, and we've said before that a royal wedding is kind of one of those days where you can kind of forgive the royals their excess and opulence, because you're like, it's a wedding day, every bride, every person getting married wants the best on their wedding day. I do think talking about it right now is very silly.
And the way that, so they have a source, like a friend of Beatrice's who tells the Mail, As the granddaughter of the Queen, it seems unfair that Bea would have to hide her nuptials from the public when her younger sister Eugenie did not have to. Eugenie's wedding was televised and watched by 3 million viewers in the UK alone. Beatrice and Eugenie's profiles and workload will increase after the departure of Harry and Meghan. Beatrice wants to show the public that she will never shirk her civic duties. She wants the public to see her as an individual and not to be judged for the mistakes of her father. By next year, it would be wonderful if she could hold her head up high as she walks down the aisle in front of hundreds of people. And they're suggesting that it could maybe be at St. George's Chapel in Windsor rather than the smaller one at St. James's Palace that they were talking about. But the idea that they're talking about this as like all about Beatrice makes it seem like especially tone deaf. And like you were saying, you know, as they say, perhaps a royal wedding in 2021 is just what is needed to boost the spirit of the nation. And perhaps it is, but literally the only thing people are thinking about right now is the virus and the economic toll of the virus. And if you're talking about a wedding that's going to cost millions in security, you know, even if they don't use taxpayer funds to fund the wedding, taxpayers will have to pay for the security. So the cost of it is the thing that is most obvious to people right now. And it just looks totally out of touch to be making this kind of suggestion to people. But they clearly realised that when there was a big backlash and they sort of backtracked a few days later.
A spokesperson for Beatrice and Edo had an exclusive for People magazine. They said, there are no plans to switch venues or hold a bigger wedding. They aren't even thinking about their wedding at this time. There will come a time to rearrange, but that's not yet. Which, yes, that's true. It's not yet.
Being very, very careful there. And they said that like the invitations were never actually sent out because of concerns about the virus, which is very handy.
Speaking of millions of pounds, apparently, according to the Daily Mail this week, rich donors have flocked to back Will and Kate.
Yeah, this was kind of a curious story in the Daily Mail. It said that Prince William and Kate have been approached in recent weeks by a series of wealthy donors who have offered cash to the pair's Royal Foundation, which will hand out grants to good causes. So apparently Will and Kate have been talking to a bunch of rich people and also a bunch of their charities and groups that are supporting the emergency service workers. And they are, I guess, going to be funneling money from wealthy donors through the Royal Foundation to give out grants to the likes of the Cavell Nurses Trust and the Care Workers Charity. And it just seemed quite unusual to me that we wouldn't just hear about this when they did award the grants. Instead, we're hearing that all of these rich people are going straight to Will and Kate because they know that they're the ones that can help and be the face of the virus.
They're the magnets.
But again, it's just another example of us hearing all this hype before they actually do anything. You know, as far as we know, they haven't awarded any grants yet.
I think we'd all be delighted to hear that the Royal Foundation was handing out thousands, millions of pounds of grants to various charities, and we'd, you know, give them a round of applause or whatever. But to be told this far in advance, it just makes you think, like, why haven't they got their act together and decided where this money's going?
I guess it makes it into a sort of 3-act play of the Royal Foundation donations. But I guess it kind of works for both sides. Like, if you're a wealthy donor, you know, if you're working with Will and Kate, you're sort of putting your hat in the ring for a spot on the honours list.
Or at very least, the invite list to the garden parties and things like that.
Yeah, and then obviously it's great PR for the Royal Foundation that people are looking to them for this kind of work.
And it gives them the kind of status of people who can decide where this money can be used best.
Prince Charles has done stuff like this with his charities as well. It's not like Kate and Will are alone in this kind of move, but you do wonder why they wouldn't either advise the wealthy donors where to make direct donations themselves or just make the grants and then tell us about it.
Yeah, I do feel like, you know, at the moment, when people need money in this coronavirus situation, they tend to need it pretty immediately for very specific reasons. And I do think that direct donations would get things done a bit quicker. But, you know, I don't run a charity, so I don't know.
But in addition to this sort of theoretical future work that we're hearing about, we also saw Prince William and Kate Middleton doing a lot of actual work this week. And they keep on zooming. Will we start with Will?
Yeah, so he has become patron of the National Emergencies Trust, and as such, he did a video call to small charities in Yorkshire and in Wales. Speaking to the Moorland Community Charity in Yorkshire, which runs a food bank and delivers hot meals on wheels to the vulnerable, he was told, "There's nothing like a crisis to bring you all together." And he replied, "I agree with you. I think Britain is at its best, weirdly, when we're all in a crisis. That community spirit and community feel comes rushing back quicker than anything else." I get the sentiment of what he's saying here. I don't think he said it maybe in quite the best way. I don't think Britain is at its best in a crisis. I think that perhaps a crisis brings out some of these great British qualities.
He's all about invoking that Blitz spirit, Tom.
Yeah.
We also saw Will virtually opening a hospital, just like Daddy. This time it was the NHS Nightingale in Birmingham, and he even wore a suit for the occasion, which we saw in a quite frightening, quite ominous photographs of the video call. So it was in the new premises of the hospital, and you had all the people lined up in their appropriately socially distanced
grid.
And then looming over them was the screen of the giant face of Will sort of glaring down at them. I don't know why they couldn't find one where he looked like a little bit less sort of severe.
Yeah. So he said, "I'm delighted to be with you all today," in digital spirit, that is, at least.
I'm sure he had a sort of smile on his face at that moment, but the
cameras didn't catch it.
The image of him looking down on them is so 1984 to me. It's like so sci-fi. This
bow to the digital spirit.
But it's obviously such a an immediately historic image to have the future king speaking to his subjects via video link.
It's just a shame he looks like a Bond villain.
And that it looks so dystopian, the way everyone is lined up in these little boxes.
The kind of big Zoom moment for me was their interview with the BBC. They both came across very well. They were speaking on a range of issues around the virus and the impact. They spoke very confidently, and they did come across as human beings, which can be difficult for, I think, all the royals at different times. But there were a few hidden moments of Will is ready to be king. My favourite one that really stood out was they were talking about how Will was quite concerned about Charles having coronavirus because
he fits the profile of somebody at the age he's at, which is fairly risky, and so I was a little bit worried. But my father has had many chest infections, colds, and things like that over the years, and so I thought to myself, if anybody's going to be able to beat this, it's going to be him. And actually, he was very lucky. He had mild symptoms.
That was so unnecessary.
He has so much experience with chest infections.
He's so ill.
He's such a sickly man.
Reminding everyone that Will is the one who's here. He's around. He's not sick like his dad. He's just reminding everyone of his own vitality and his own health compared to his frail, ancient father.
Which is very different from Charles's kind of approach to it, which is he's this survivor. He's beaten the virus.
But this is what I mean when I talk about the Game of Thrones vibe you get from all of them in their separate houses doing these Zoom calls trying to show survival of the fittest.
Because Will even says that Charles was lucky that he only had very mild symptoms.
Because they could have wiped him out altogether.
One thing that I thought was really good that he talked about was when he brought up the hero tag that is being applied to NHS frontline workers. He said,
"This hero tag that we're attaching to the NHS workers, albeit is totally valid, we've got to be careful that we don't, alienate some of the other NHS workers who do really generally worry and are scared going to work every single day."
Which I thought was really good because you just hear this word hero all the time, and I imagine it when you're in a position where you're scared, you don't necessarily want to be under this pressure of having to act like a hero.
I did enjoy some advice he gave on materialism when he said,
I do really hope that people start valuing things that really matter in life and forget about some of the materialism that's been out there in the past.
Which just means so much coming from him.
From a member of the royal family to tell you about your materialism.
Read the room, man.
Well, I liked when he said, "This recenters, refocuses and brings us all together. As a world, we need to be brought together a lot more. There's a lot of divisiveness out there. This
out
fucking
there,
family.
not in here.
He also cemented himself as an environmental visionary. He said
the environmental impact of what, no one traveling around the place has made a huge difference, I think, all around the world. I've always thought that was lunacy, really, as to why on earth we do that when we've got the technology nowadays to do things. Why don't we conduct more business at home?
I mean, Will certainly seems to be doing a lot more business.
I feel
now
like
that
we've
he can
seen
do it
him
at home.
way more since he can do it from his sitting room. Kate really pioneered this way of working when she guest edited the Huffington Post and moved the office to her sitting room.
But especially with Will, like, he's been accused of being work shy and being lazy. Now that he can just do it from his own house, he seems very happy to do 1 or even 2 Zoom calls a day. But I really think the novelty of these Zoom calls is wearing off. We spoke before about how the royals really need to be visible and that they really thrive on that connection with people when they get to meet one-to-one or on walkabouts. And if they don't have that, then they sort of lose that very necessary contact with people. So I don't know if this is a long-term option for the royals for them to continue to work from home. While Will was spouting all of this stuff, Kate, I have to say, looked like bored out of her skull. I mean, it is hard, like, if you're on a video call with someone else next to you to know, like, where to look and what kind of expression to have, but she looked glazed as hell. Like, she just looked so fed up with the whole thing to me at the moment, because he was doing an awful lot of the talking.
Yeah.
Which maybe she's happy with, but she just looked totally fed up.
But it was very different from when she was speaking, because I thought she made some great points. She was talking about the fact that her kids are aware of what's going on to kind of different degrees. She said,
they are aware. I think I'm always surprised. And although you don't want to sort of scare them and make it too overwhelming, I think it is appropriate to acknowledge it in the simple ways and in age-appropriate ways.
I'm not a parent, but it must be a difficult thing to manage, like, how much do I tell my kids? And for someone who is, like, held up as such an example of wonderful parenting, to say, this is what I think is a good thing to do.
Yeah, it would have been nice to get, like, a little bit of elaboration on that, maybe.
Yeah.
She was also asked about homeschooling, and she revealed that they have kept the homeschooling going into the Easter holidays, but don't tell the children, and that she feels very mean, she says as she laughs.
I feel very mean.
But she praised Prince George, Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis because they have got such stamina.
Again, this incredibly healthy and robust Cambridge family who are ready to take on the mantle of ruling the nation.
I enjoyed her list when she talked about how they make a list every day of all the work they've done in their homeschooling. And I don't know what I expected it to be. Like, obviously I'm not doing any homeschooling. I know fuck all about this, so who am I to say anything? But I was still amused when she said,
you pitch a tent, take the tent down again, cook, bake. You get to the end of the day, they've had a lovely time. But it is amazing how much you can cram into one day, that's for sure.
This weird ritual with the tent.
I mean, this doesn't sound like the British curriculum to me, and I feel like...
What would you know, Maeve?
I feel
That's
like
what I did every day in school.
I feel like this is a little bit woo-woo, new agey, hippy-dippy, Meghan Markle-ish almost.
Setting up your meditation tent in the morning.
With your holistic curriculum for your kids.
It is amazing how much putting up and putting down the tent you can cram into one day. That's for sure. Will also revealed that they've been talking to all the family online, although he doesn't make any specific reference to Harry and Meghan.
Or anyone else.
But he actually lies. Because he says, as you can imagine, the younger generation are a little bit more tech savvy. But we know, Will, that Camilla has been on House Party for weeks. So stop trying to mislead us and sell us on your great tech skills.
He says, oh, now they're figuring out how they know the right buttons to push. Camilla's known all along.
Yeah, and he says, like, they don't drop the computer halfway through. Like, because Camilla knows you can do it on her phone. She doesn't need to set up the laptop or,
desktop. Camilla did get left out, though. when Kate said, your father and my parents and our families and things like that have really loved keeping in touch with the children because they know it's really hard.
Apparently Camilla doesn't give a shit about the kids.
Well, I do think it was significant that she says your father and my parents and not your parents and my parents. I mean, we know that Will and Camilla don't have an amazingly close relationship, but...
Yeah, I mean, she could have referred to them collectively as grandparents or something like that. But we did get a great little fact about our little bloke Louis.
So good. Will revealed.
For some reason, he sees the red button and always wants to press the red button.
Louis is totally over Zoom. Every time they try to make a call, he sees that red button and he's just constantly trying to press it.
He's totally done with it. And what's really funny is that comes right at the end of the interview and then it ends quite abruptly as though Louis has managed to hang up the call.
Well done, Louis. Jane Goodall, the primatologist, had some words to say about Will this week and also about Harry in an interview with the Radio Times ahead of a documentary that's going to be airing about her in the coming days. The interviewer suggests to her that Harry and Will are champions of the natural world, and she immediately says, yes, except they hunt and shoot. But I think Harry will stop because Meghan doesn't like hunting, so I suspect that is over for him. Which I thought was like a good point to make because we hear so much about how Will and Harry are making conservation a cornerstone of their work, but the fact that they both do quite a lot of hunting and have done for years and years is like very conveniently omitted in a lot of those conversations. Yeah. But she just comes straight out and says it. I mean, she could maybe have stopped and not speculated on whether Harry is going to stop, because I'm sure Harry doesn't need any more headlines about him, and she's just feeding that. Yeah. Which she continued to do when she was asked if she thinks she'll still have his support in her work. And she said, I don't know how his career is going to map out, but yes, I've been in touch, though I think he's finding life a bit challenging right now. I mean, do you think Harry would appreciate...
I mean, I suppose the nicest way of interpreting that is like she's maybe trying to say to the press, leave him alone or give him a break or something. But from what we've seen of Harry, he likes to keep his private life very private.
Yeah, and I mean, up until this point, we didn't have anything to really talk about them. I mean, that has since changed, but if she hadn't said anything, it could have saved them quite a few stories.
Yeah. When she says they've been in touch, do you think it was by Zoom?
Well, Harry's certainly been doing a lot of Zooming.
Yeah, so he was on a video call this week with the CEO of Wellchild, along with 2 parents of children supported by the charity and a nurse as well.
He praised the parents' resilience and their strength, saying, I can't even begin to imagine how hard it is for you guys, referencing his own experience of having one kid at 11 months old. He spoke about the positives of having so much family time.
You've got to celebrate those moments where you just are on the floor rolling around in hysterics because of something that's happened.
Just a cute little image.
A cute little image, but one also that I'm just seeing through the filter of Lifetime movies. Like, that you have these, like, beautiful, gorgeous moments of the young family just having the best time. I'm imagining a Christmas tree there as well for some reason. And then it cuts to, like, the papers the next day or something.
The Zoom call gave us a little bit of an insight into their new base in LA, which up to this point we'd only heard that it was in a secluded compound. But we noticed that the background of this Zoom call was very similar to the background of the video where he announced that the Invictus Games had been postponed. Like, we'll post a picture of it, but if you look at it, I mean, the distance between the wall and the cupboard door and the panel on the cupboard door are very, very similar and suggest that he's filming in the exact same spot for both times.
What I did really like is we got a glimpse of what might have been on display behind him, just to the very corner of the frame. So thank you to Rachel for sending the blown up screenshots to us. It looks like they have a big brass sculpture of a hand, which I really appreciated because they are so hands-on as a source of action.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
According to The Sun, this is an £8 million mansion in a gated community near where Elton John and David Furnish live. And this rental home has a pool, a gym and landscape gardens. It is accessible through 2 guarded checkpoints and prides itself on being paparazzi proof. But they are looking for a more permanent home in Bel Air, according to TMZ. I mean, the Fresh Prince of Bel Air. What did you think of Harry's Zoom style? I know we've talked a lot about Kate's Zoom style. How did Harry's look make you feel?
I thought it was pretty shit, to be honest. We know he likes this kind of tousled hair look, which I guess helps to kind of maybe hide some of the thinning and the bald patch. And that looks very good, and some might say sexy, when his hair is cut a bit shorter. You know, everyone's hair is growing out at this point. And with his kind of messy look he's gone for here, it looks like he's just out of the shower, or maybe just woken up. Maybe just woken up in the shower and then staggered out to the Zoom
and
call.
pulled on a polo shirt.
Yeah, I just wasn't a fan of this.
Katie, will you please tell him his hair looks sexy pushback?
We heard more from Harry, but did not see him in little clips that he's done an interview with the Declassified podcast, which I think is coming out today, Monday, if you're listening to this today. But we just had a little excerpt from it in some of the newspapers, and it is a podcast hosted by the former soldier Michael Coates, and it shares stories from members of the military community. And Harry has done a little interview with them in which he praised Captain Tom Moore, who is this 99-year-old veteran over here, and he has raised £24 million for the NHS through, you know, he's now done a charity single with Michael Ball. He does the walks around his garden. He's on social media now. He's become a real star in the media over here.
It's really amazing work. The amount of money is incredible that he's raised, and God knows, at the moment, the NHS need all the funding that they can get. However, it's also raised criticism, people saying that we shouldn't be using 99-year-olds to fund the NHS.
Yeah.
It's a nice story, but it also glosses over a lot of the problems from the last few years.
We should say that Will and Kate also sent like a message to him, and Tom called Will his super prince.
Not me, Tom.
Captain Tom called Will his super prince.
My super prince.
But anyway, Harry says on the podcast, "I'm just so incredibly proud to see what these individuals up and down the country and across the world are doing." Which is nice. He goes on.
I mean, it's the very best of the human spirit. You know, it's also proving that I think things are better than we're led to believe through, you know, certain corners of the media. You know, again, Rich was touching on the isolation piece. It can be very, very worrying when you're sitting there. The only sort of information you're getting is through certain news channels. But then if you're out and about or you're on the right platforms, you can really sense this human spirit coming to the forefront.
I didn't like this at all.
I mean, we know that Harry has this war with the media and he's very sensitive about the media, but I really felt like this was a very irresponsible thing for him to say, and to be suggesting that you're getting a jaundiced view of coronavirus by reading certain corners of the media, which seems to imply the tabloid media or the media that he is suing. But if you actually read the tabloids over here, which we do every day, and they love Captain Tom, and they're the ones that have made Captain Tom into this hero of the quarantine and of the pandemic. And because, you know, he's a veteran, he's very old, he very much appeals to their readership. He is exactly the kind of person they want as the face of the pandemic. So it seems totally inaccurate for Harry to be blaming the media for focusing on or inflating the negatives of the virus, which is just inaccurate anyway. And we've heard so many doctors today saying that he is totally wrong there and that he's completely incorrect in saying that they're exaggerating how bad it is.
I feel like if anybody else was saying you need to focus on this human interest story instead of the stories that the government is asking NHS workers to reuse single-use protective equipment, I would be like, this is very, very, very not good.
But let's talk about Meghan. So we heard this week that Harry and Meghan have pledged just over £90,000 to the charity Feeding Britain for its programmes across the UK, which provides families in need with hot meals and food packages Now, just to note for people that are following this, like you and I, this was another exclusive for Victoria Murphy, a Town and Country, who seems to be emerging as one of their outlets that they particularly like. I was a little bit confused about this because their wedding obviously was 2 years ago, but apparently it was agreed at the time of the wedding that if there were any excess profits from the BBC broadcast of their wedding, that money would go to a charity chosen by the couple, and they only learned about the £90,000 excess profits around the time that the pandemic was starting. So I guess it takes a long time.
It's a great use of that money, I think.
They wanted to donate to a charity supported by the Archbishop of Canterbury because he played such a big role in the wedding, and he's president of Feeding Britain. So that's why they picked Feeding Britain. And a spokesperson for Harry and Meghan said that they were delighted to see the money go to such a great cause. And I'm delighted too. And I feel like it's becoming clearer and clearer that food inequality is a big issue for Meghan. And it's becoming like more of a defining issue for her. Like, I think we've talked before about how when she was in school, when she was like 13, she volunteered at a soup kitchen. We've also heard that when she was working on Suits, she would have leftovers from the catering to be donated to homeless shelters. And then of course there was the Together cookbook with the Hubb Community Kitchen. That was like her first big project as a royal, and now she's made this donation. And we had 2 other things this week where she supported the Evening Standard newspaper's food appeal and also did some volunteering delivering Meals on Wheels around LA.
So last week, as we're recording, so probably more like 2 weeks if you're listening to this on Monday, Meghan had another Zoom call, with members of the Hubb Community Kitchen about how they could adapt the service to feed people at a time when social distancing rules prevent it from opening as normal. So starting from Monday, they're launching a new meal delivery service for poor, elderly and vulnerable Londoners, supported by funds raised through the Evening Standard's Food for London Now appeal. Much of the produce will be supplied by the Evening Standard's charity partner, the Felix Project, which sources surplus food from cafes, restaurants and supermarkets.
Yeah, and we saw a little clip of Meghan on her Zoom call in her white t-shirt talking to some of the women from the Hubb Community Kitchen. And she also made a statement about the Evening Standard campaign, endorsing it. She said the spirit of the Hubb Community Kitchen has always been one of caring, giving back and helping those in need, initially in Grenfell and now throughout the UK. A home-cooked meal from one neighbour to another when they need it most is what community is all about. And Tom, I needed that statement from Meghan.
Well, and you got it. She's
delivered it when I needed it most.
It's not the only thing she delivered when people need it most. Harry and Meghan have completed 2 days of volunteering in LA with Project Angel Food.
I love this story. I loved hearing about this.
Yeah.
There's a few aspects of it that I love. One is that Project Angel Food is a charity that prepares and delivers non-perishables and emergency kits to vulnerable people, and that it was founded by the former presidential candidate Marianne Williamson.
Girlfriend, you were so on.
So good.
So good. Apparently, Meghan is a big fan of Marianne Williamson, which is no surprise at
so
all.
Much sense.
Doria is supposedly a big fan.
Girlfriend, you were so on.
One of the recipients of these deliveries, Dan Tyrrell, was accepting a delivery for himself and his neighbour who has type 1 diabetes. And he broke the story by telling the local news publication WeHoville that he had seen Meghan and Harry. And the website, the WeHoville website, actually crashed because so many people were going, I bet they've never seen traffic like that in their lives. But anyway, what he said was they were both nice and very down-to-earth people. They had masks on and they were dressed down with jeans, but very nice jeans. I thought that tall red-headed guy looked pretty familiar, and that girl was very pretty. Then I saw the large black SUVs with security guards behind them. That would just be so exciting. And we heard a little bit more about it when the executive director of Project Angel Food, Richard Ayoub, spoke to People. He said they actually did 2 deliveries for us, one on Easter Sunday and one on Wednesday, and they've done it quietly. We're completely honoured. They were extremely down to earth and genuinely interested in every single person they met. They engaged with our chefs, they engaged with clients. They just wanted to make sure that people felt the love and appreciation. Their goal was really to just honour our chefs and staff and volunteers by being of service. Service, Claxon.
Wow.
I loved when he said, what Meghan said is she wanted to show Harry Los Angeles through the eyes of philanthropy. It's just beautiful. That's coming from him, but it could also be coming from me because it is just beautiful.
I mean, the first time I heard that, I'm not kidding, my eyes welled up. It's such a beautiful sentiment.
Anyway, he goes on. There's obviously a great deal of love and selflessness between them. They both are individuals who want to know about others. Our clients are clients who are often forgotten. They really wanted to go visit these people. They wanted to see them and talk to them and hopefully put a smile on their faces. And he revealed that it was Meghan's mother, Dory Ragland, who suggested it in the first place. Meghan said she wanted to do something to give back on Easter and was talking to her mom, and her mom told her that Project Angel Food needs help, and Meghan said, yes, brilliant. Yes, brilliant.
Yes, brilliant.
So this was a good story. And then I was very surprised to see TMZ acquired security footage of Harry and Meghan outside the building actually making a delivery.
And this footage was like very clearly filmed from the monitor on someone's phone.
It felt so invasive. I felt like really dirty watching this video on TMZ. But there's kind of two sides to it, I think, because this is obviously the first time we've seen them out and about in LA together, and they're doing charity work, just like the first time we saw Meghan in Canada was her going to that women's shelter. So it is like a really great look for them, I think, and it shows that they're very hands-on, they're very active, they're helping people, and we were both saying that it's a very nice palate cleanser after the stories about them meeting with the big bankers and stuff like that, that it kind of balances that out a little bit.
It's a nice way to, I guess, formally introduce yourself to the community that you've just moved to as well, because, you know, they must know that they're going to be bringing a lot of attention, even somewhere like LA, which is used to all that attention, but to be showing that you're committed, not just to charitable causes, but to very localised charitable causes, I think, like you say, it's a really good look.
But on the flip side then, it does raise questions about their security and the paparazzi industry and the media industry in Los Angeles. And, you know, you had a lot of people saying, like, oh, would they have been protected if they'd been doing this in the UK compared to LA? And the Daily Mail did run this footage as well in the UK, but TMZ seems to have a relationship with sources that's very different than the relationships that we see between the media and sources in the UK. This footage feels very invasive in a way you don't really see that often here. And I liked that Lainey Gossip pointed out that celebrities like Brad Pitt and Beyonce and Jennifer Aniston have worked out security systems that allow them to move around without getting papped, but that system really defines them as separate from the rest of us. She said, for those celebrities, relatability is a joke. Harry and Meghan's brand is about connection. They claim to want to understand us and to be understood. That despite the fact that he's a prince and a duke and she's a duchess and they're royal, they would still bring groceries to your door. How are they going to balance all these motivations that can sometimes be in conflict? So I think that's going to be very interesting as it goes on, especially because then in the days since then we've seen 2 rounds of paparazzi photos of them out and about making deliveries and walking their dogs.
Yes, we got to see their dogs, which was very cute. And Pop Bitch noted that the photos, which we saw in The Sun, are credited to Jeff Rayner, who's from an LA-based photo agency, Coleman Rayner, and that we may remember Jeff as the man who previously set up the staged shots of Thomas Markle getting fitted for a wedding suit and searching for pictures of Harry at an internet cafe. So those are the ones that kicked off so much of the Markle family brouhaha.
Yeah, all of the drama kind of traces back to those photos, and it's the same person who took those photos as took these first paparazzi photos of Harry and Meghan in LA and now knows where they live, and presumably we're going to be getting photos of them every time they go outside, like Ben Affleck and Ana de Armas, basically.
Banana.
These paparazzi photos, though, did give me my Fit for a Queen this week when we saw Meghan out volunteering, delivering the meal to Dan Tyrrell, wearing Stan Smith's black jeans, a white linen shirt by Frank and Eileen, her Le Spec sunglasses, and that Zodiac necklace, the Taurus necklace by the Suitables, which we love so much, with, of course, her gloves and mask, and natural hair. We saw her natural hair in ponytail underneath her volunteering cap from Project Angel Food. I thought this was a great look for Meghan. Obviously, it was really blurry and I felt like a dirtbag for looking at it on the surveillance footage. But she looked so relaxed. I like that she was supporting the small businesses with the Frank and Eileen shirt. They're based in LA. And then the Suitables necklace, they're based in Toronto. I just thought she looked so laid back and it was very exciting. What about you?
I have a different fit for a queen because of one photo that really stopped me in my tracks. So I think it was just yesterday that Saturday, we got this amazing photo from Clarence House of Camilla supporting brilliant young musicians who had played Beethoven's Ode to Joy in support of NHS workers. It's another great use of the Birkhall porch backdrop with its weird special chair. But the real focus of this was, of course, Camilla standing there in this great all-navy look, very slight military influence to it. I think Kate might have got hold of the jumper at one point and sewn loads of buttons along the shoulders, but it had these kind of neon green elbow patches, and she had the ultimate accessory, the accessory I never thought I needed, but it was a musical triangle. But she's standing there holding, and she looks like she knows how to use it. I thought it was an incredible look. I thought it was very bold. I thought it was very empowering of her to reference her own love triangles from over the years, both with Anne and Andrew Parker Bowles, and of course Charles and Diana. So brave, bold, powerful. Thank you, Camilla.
Thank you for that, Tom. Let's move on to our quote of the week. Tell me your quote of the week, Tom.
I think mine comes from Anne in the Vanity Fair interview, where she said that, I think during the day, eating's not really an issue. As though the royals could be any more alienated from me. I can tell you that eating is a very important issue to me. But she said that she would skip a lunch because her priority is to press on with a packed schedule. And an aide says she never stops for refreshments or even tea until her schedule is done.
She couldn't be less relatable.
Yeah, I mean, what does she run on? Just like pure service power?
I don't like the idea that she's meant to be even more admirable because she doesn't eat.
Yeah, that's weird.
But it was like, this was very early in that Vanity Fair feature, and it was like, fuck, okay, we're coming out with this kind of...
What about you, Maeve?
I loved, in that interview on WeHoville, when I was finally able to access the link, Dan Tyrrell said of seeing Harry and Meghan, if they had given me the heads up, I would have worn my tiara. Very good.
Who is your first in line, though?
I think everybody has been doing a very good job at the moment, and we've seen a lot of work. We actually haven't seen any work from Princess Anne, but she is my first in line this week because I don't know of anybody else who could land the cover of Vanity Fair with what is one of the most boring interviews in recent memory, and she didn't even have to pose for a photo shoot for it. She did the bare minimum for this interview, and she gets the cover with this super hot glam shot from when she's 29. So she looks amazing. She gets this incredibly flattering feature, and people are raving about it. I've seen a lot of discussion in like royal fan groups of people who would never buy Vanity Fair are now seeking out Vanity Fair. So there might even be a rise in sales, which is crazy because it is not worth it for that interview alone. I'm sure the other content inside is going to be great, and I would encourage you to subscribe. It's a great magazine. But just the whole this cover is just a masterclass for me.
It's a really incredible achievement, and I think you're right to commend it with first in line.
So what about next week, Tom? What are you looking forward to in the coming week?
I mean, I'm probably not going to be able to sleep tonight because I'm so excited that Meghan's going to be giving her first interview since the move. She's going to be talking about Elephant on Good Morning America on Monday morning.
Yeah, and it looks like this was a pre-recorded interview because it looks like she's in a studio here. And it's on ABC, which is owned by Disney. And I feel like it's going to be a lot of talk about Disney stuff. But you never know. She could talk a bit more about families sticking together. And
I would die if she said... She's not going to say anything interesting like that.
Well, we'll still be watching eagerly. We've also got 2 big birthdays this week.
We've got the Queen turning 94, and we've got little bloke Louis turning 2.
Yeah, just days after each other. So we're very excited. Hopefully we'll get new pics of both of them. We also might see a little appearance from Prince Harry in Jane Goodall's documentary this week. And probably a fuck ton more Zoom calls.
That seems to be the trend.
We hope you'll come back and join us next week to talk about all this. And in the meantime, you can find us on Instagram, Twitter and Pinterest at AirheadsPod and on Facebook at Airheads.
If you like this episode, please leave us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts and tell a friend. I'm going to get back to reading the American Royals now. And also, thank you to one of our incredible listeners who sent me a knitting pattern for a tiny Camilla Parker Bowles. So I'm looking forward to getting started on that as well.
Hope you all stay safe and stay well and stay home. And we'll talk to you next week. Bye.
Bye.
Pitch a tent, take the tent down again.